What is the book of 1 Peter about? Well, it's a book written by Peter, but by the time Peter wrote, the church was about ready to undergo tremendous persecution. The year would be about AD 64. A madman named Nero had ascended to the throne and had begun to persecute Christians. He had begun to light Christians on fire, for example, to illuminate his garden parties. He began to burn Rome, at least parts of it, and he blamed that fire that he started on Christians. And so Christianity was really coming into disrepute about AD 64. They accused Christians of being cannibals because they partook of the Lord's Supper. So they obviously misunderstood what the whole Lord's Supper is about. The Christians were called traitors by this time because they spoke of another kingdom. So Rome maligned them as, traitors against Rome. Christianity had never experienced anything like this before. All of the persecution that Christians have experienced up to this point in time have been random and sporadic, and mostly through the hands of unbelieving Jews. But now Rome itself is coming against Christianity. So Peter writes to his flock. We believe that his flock is also Jewish Christians scattered in the diaspora. They were kicked out of the land some decades earlier by Saul of Tarsus, who persecuted them. And these Christians were starting to suffer. Now, where were they? Well, they were in, and Peter gives us their address, north central Turkey. So he mentions places of geography right at the beginning of chapter 1, like Pontus, Galatia, Bithynia, Asia, Cappadocia. So we can locate that as north central Turkey. And Peter writes this letter from Babylon. You'll see a reference to that in 1 Peter 5, verse 13. I have no desire to rewrite the Bible and make it sound like Babylon means Rome, as many people do, because you see, Peter was the apostle to the Jews. And most of the Jews who had gone into captivity in Old Testament times went to captivity in Babylon, and most of them stayed there. A very small number of them returned to the land of Israel, as recorded in the books of Ezra and Nehemiah. So the bottom line is Peter's writing from Babylon, which is modern-day Iraq, and he's writing to Hebrew Christians in north-central Turkey, and they are beginning to suffer thanks to Nero, and he's educating them about the reality of suffering as a Christian. So the point of the book, or the message of the book, is suffering for the cause of Christ in the hope of future glory. And the book has three basic parts. So salvation, the destiny of the Christian, part 1. Then we would have submission, the duty of the Christian, part 2. And suffering, the discipline of the Christian, part 3. In chapter 1, verse 1 through chapter 2, verse 10, he talks about salvation, the destiny of the Christian. And he traces our salvation, and he explains how suffering is connected to it in a beautiful way. Then in chapter 2, verse 11 through chapter 3, around verse 12, he deals with the whole subject of submission, the duty of the Christian. So in life, we have to submit to unfair circumstances. And how do we maintain Christ's likeness in the midst of unfair circumstances? And Peter explains that in the area of different relationships, like government persecuting Christians, even in marriage where the wife happens to be a believer and the husband remains an unbeliever. In other words, you find yourself in these unfair circumstances. How do you react to that? How do you suffer, which God has called us to do in certain circumstances, in a way that's pleasing unto the Lord? And then finally, beginning about chapter 3, verse 14 through the end of the book, he deals with the whole subject of suffering, the discipline of the Christian. So he explains that in different roles that we are in, like you might find yourself in the role of a shepherd, chapter 5. We suffer in those roles. So the bottom line is suffering for the cause of Christ in the hope of future glory. And really the whole point of the book is here's how you're to suffer in a Christ-like way. And the common theme that goes all the way through this book is the sufferings that we experience are very, very minor compared to the eternal glory that awaits us. So the book is relevant to you because as a Christian, at some point you're going to find yourself in unfair circumstances. And I would say even here in the United States of America, Christianity is no longer viewed favorably, and we're starting to see persecution, at least in a mild sense. And so we need to get back to the whole book of 1 Peter and learn how to suffer the way God would have us to suffer as part of our calling. And so it's a very relevant book for our times, and I hope you'll get into the book of 1 Peter and enjoy it.